Welcome everyone to another episode of the Dragonus Podcastus. My name is Deadponic, her name is Lady Maeve, and we have quite the special episode for you. If you want to support us, you can do so through the Patreon, the Fiverr page, and Lady Maeve's School for Exploding Sandwiches. Lady Maeve, tell them about the school.
Hello, adventurers. Do you want to learn how to play D&D, or do you want to play in a weekly one-shot or campaign? I have the games for you. If you're between the ages of 7 and 16, you can click on the Outschool link in our details below to join one of the over 22 games from Monday to Friday with other kids your own age. If you're between the ages of 16 to adult, you can join in on the fun with the Start Play link in the details below. I'm currently running 2 campaigns that play weekly and have openings for players. One is on Sunday night and one is on Monday. And I'll be running one-shots at least once a month. My next one-shot is on Saturday, March 8th, and we'll be playing Thunderball Run. Come join in a wild airship race as you dodge the Royal Sky Navy to help an old friend win one more time before she hangs up her airship and retires. Mention this podcast to get $5 off any class or your first game with me. You can also check out the Fire Bunny Etsy shop for fun adventuring companions and gear.
So, for this episode, we will be reviewing the new monster manual that was just released not that long ago that was published by Wizards. It is worth noting a few things here. There are some players and some dedicated YouTube channels who have chosen not to use the rules presented in the new book due to certain changes that were made. Lady Maeve, would you actually mind elaborating on this?
Yes. So it's up to the DM and the group playing to decide which resources you want to use in your games. Just because Wizards of the Coast comes out with a brand new book doesn't mean you have to rush out, buy it, and use it right away. I know many groups that have been established, they're sticking to the 2014 Monster Manual and books, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're not using the 2024 rules from the Player's Handbook or the DM's Guide, you can still use this Monster Manual to run monsters in your game. This monster manual will add more options to your monster menageries. It has some classic monsters that have been removed, the drow and the orcs. Now, rumor mill says that the drow were removed because they're going to be getting their own book soon in their own setting. Rumors have leaked that there's Dritz on the cover, which is a very famous drow. He's been in novels since the 1980s. And the orcs have been retconned in 2024 as a race of adventuring souls who go out and see the countryside, no longer evil marauders or raiders. I think an orc snuck into Wizards of the Coast and changed the text on that. But if you want to use orcs as evil creatures, go for it. But they will not be in this monster manual. They're still in the classic monster manual. They're still in Out of the Abyss. There are many resources to get some cool drow stat blocks.
Do you think the orc went into the executive office and changed everything in crayon?
I think so, yeah.
So now when I first heard about these changes, I was thinking to myself, are they nuts? But I think it's important to get this out there and let Wizards know that what they changed may not necessarily work for everybody, and most people are sticking to the 2014 rules because of this. But enough of that. Let's get on talking about the book. Let's talk about that cover art on the book, because that is something else.
So just so everyone knows that Wizards of the Coast always puts out 2 sets of covers. There is the normal cover, and then there's an alternate cover that a lot of people like to collect. Good news is either version costs exactly the same. They don't charge more for the collector's edition. The regular cover has a beholder battling a longtime fan favorite, Mince, with his little hamster Boo, and a wizard named Vajra Safar. Also pictured on the cover some classic monsters, Displacer Beast, ogres, flame skulls, gelatinous cubes, goblins, mimics, and something with way too many tentacles. The alternate cover is in black, blue, and purple and shows a mind flayer with a brood. He's just kind of like holding it in his mouth tentacles. But yeah, there's 2 cover choices for the collectors.
So the thing that has too many tentacles, I think that's Cthulhu, but I could be wrong here. I absolutely love this cover art. It's got a lot of flair and it really grabs your attention. You on the classic anyway. You got your Displacer Beast, you've got the Mimic that looks like he's about to tuck into an all-you-can-eat buffet. I don't know why he's looking at the Beholder like he's going to devour that thing. You got the big green ugly orc. And of course, you've got the Beholder. I do not know why they chose to make the Beholder the official mascot of Dungeons and Dragons, but it somehow works. Now, what actually is new in the book?
I think it's because Xanathar helps run the company. He's a beholder. He has his own book. Xanathar is guide. Everything. He has his tentacles in every book release. I think that's why beholders keep getting snuck in. All right, so what's new? More monsters. This book has over 500 stat blocks. You can still use the 2014 Monster Manual along with this book, and you're going to get a ton of different levels of the same monster to run in your games. It's more options for the most used monsters. There are some brand new monsters we've never heard of before. It's really good. And there's artwork for pretty much every monster, and the artwork is pretty beautiful. We have new monsters. They have made the stat blocks quicker to read for the DMs. I call these DM-friendly stat blocks. Monsters now have saving throws that are very clearly marked, so the DM can just roll that d20 and add the modifier without having trying to calculate what the saving throw might be. Some monsters in the old book would have a con plus 12, and it only mentioned like 2 or 3 stats. But let's say you need a nature check from your monster. You can now do that quickly. There are simplified stat blocks. They cut out a lot of the wordiness in some of the descriptions of the monster's attacks, making it clear, quick, and easy for the DM to read and run combat on the fly. It is better organized. There are several charts that you can go to where the monsters are divided up by type or habitat or CR rating. In the digital version of the book, this works really well because you just click on the chart. It will come up with, let's say, all the aberrations. You get a list of all the aberrations. You click on the name you want. It goes straight to the stat block. Of course, in the book, you have to turn to the page number. There are treasure lists for most of the monsters. They'll say if it has artifacts or if it has gemstones. Now, this is a separate rolling chart from the DM's guide. Again, online, this is a lot smoother. You just click on the monster's treasure list. It takes you right to that chart. And the monsters have been buffed up to match stronger players. They are not playing around with these monsters. They are stronger, they are faster, and they have more fun abilities for the DM to use.
I think it's interesting that they categorize the monsters by habitat now, and some of the monsters actually have layer abilities, particularly the legendary monsters. I think that's really cool. Anyway, so we looked through the book and we've both picked out our favorite 5 monsters, and we're gonna go back and forth on our picks and why we chose them and what their stats are and how we would use them, and look at their art, because the art is also really gorgeous. Like, the art department did a phenomenal job. So I'll start off by activating Pot of Greed to draw 2 cards. Nah, just kidding. I wish they had done that, though. I wish they had like a Pot of Greed monster card or something like that. But my first pick is actually the Balor. The Balor gets points for the artwork, and just because it clearly looks like a Balrog for Lord of the Rings. I think that's what they were going for. It's a demon of eternal rage used by demon lords and evil gods as commanders of demonic armies or a guardian of some unknown treasure.
And just so everyone knows, the Balor is the Balrog. They couldn't get the copyrights to call it a Balrog, so it is a Balrog. They just had to name it something else. So we call it the not Balrog in the game.
So the Balor comes in with a whopping challenge rating 19 and 287 hit points. It has resistance to cold and lightning, immunity to fire and poison. It can't be charmed, it can't be frightened, or it can't be poisoned. And as a legendary trait 3 times a day, whenever the Balor fails a saving throw, it could just say, "No, I succeed," and making it potentially invincible. And it also has advantage on saving throws against spells or magical effects. And just like we were talking about, like how it's basically the Balrog. It has the Flame Whip, a Fire Aura, and a Lightning Blade. If the Flame Whip hits a creature that is huge or larger, the Balor pulls the target up to 25 feet towards itself, and then the target has the prone condition. I'm I can't be the only one who is thinking of the Bridge of Khazad-dûm here. The fire aura makes it that at the end of the battler's turn, all creatures within 5 feet in all directions take 3d8 fire damage. And the other noteworthy attack is the lightning blade. This one is can be pretty annoying if it's spammed, but when it hits, the target cannot take reactions until the start of the next battler's turn. And basically, you want to use this as if you want to relive the fight between the White Wizard, or the Grey Wizard, sorry, and the Balrog from Lord of the Rings. This is how you do it. One thing though, make sure your party brings holy weapons. Demons hate holy weapons. And
Little caveat about that, they've taken away that ability that magic weapons do damage these monsters now. Now it's resistant to any slashing, piercing, or bludgeoning. It's no longer, oh, if you have a magic weapon, it's normal damage. So they have buffed these monsters a lot. So even if you do have that Holy Avenger, add a smite to it with your spell slot, because it's just going to work like a normal sword. It's going to be half damage.
Yeah, and I think the best way to use this is to basically have it guard a treasure, or, have it where after the party beats the mini boss, you're like, oh, well, now there's a bigger thing coming this way. And now he wants to play tag. And guess what? He's it, and you gotta run for your life. Small suggestion, do not toss the dwarf across the bridge. Results may vary.
Dwarf tossing. All right, so I went with my first choice for an old favorite, the Tarrasque. The original 2014 Tarrasque was it's a huge monster. It's got a lot of lore behind it. It does a lot of damage only if you're on the ground. If you can get up into the air on a spelljammer or a fly spell, or you're an Aarakocra, you can easily spam it with arrows and kill it over many, many rounds, but eventually it will die. The new Tarrasque is upgraded and now has a distance weapon called Thunderous Bellow. This new Tarrasque, AC of 25, 697 hit points. Hit points are a suggestion. You, the DM, either roll the hit dice, which is 34 d20s plus 340, or you can just say it has 1,000 hit points, whatever you want. They did a good job making this more of a threat. It is resistant to weapons. So the whole magical weapons will pierce it, slash it, whatever, gone. All weapons are resistant. So it will take half damage from any bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, whether that weapon's magical or not. The improved Tarrasque has that Thunderous Bellow. It's a 150-foot cone. It does 12-sided dice thunder damage. And if you, the DM, want this thing to rear up on its back legs and then do the Thunderous Bellow, you can hit pretty much any target in the sky. This thing's the size of a city. It will render your players deaf and frightened if they fail. The save is a DC 27 con save. Again, the Tarrasque, they've clarified the language. Every time a spell that uses an attack roll hits the Tarrasque, you roll a d6. 1 of 5, nothing happens. Your spellcaster loses a spell slot. On a 6, it bounces back and hits the caster with the same damage type, spell level, and everything the caster just used. Legendary actions have been changed. You used to have a point system where you'd have 3, 4, or 5 points, and each action would cost a certain number of points. Now all legendary actions have been changed to say, all right, on this Tarrasque specifically, you get 3 actions per round. So it can do onslaught, or it can move half its speed and make an attack, or it can shake the earth, making a shockwave and a 60-foot sphere coming out of itself. Everybody in that area loses concentration. And there is no roll against that. They lose concentration. Everyone's knocked prone, and the Tarrasque can only do that once per round. But they can do the onslaught up to 3 times per round. So they've definitely buffed these creatures. They've made them a lot stronger, a lot harder to defeat. And my players are so far saying it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, you'd have to be pretty crazy to take on a Tarrasque, in my opinion. So my next pick is a classic. It's one of the dragons, specifically the Bronze Dragon. it gets on here for me for two reasons. It's layer effects and the artwork. I seen Jaws from James Bond bite a shark, okay? But I never seen a dragon bite a shark. And this is one of those few dragons that can actually swim. As if that's not, or as if a giant lizard flying through the sky isn't already terrifying enough. Now they can swim. It's like, were these guys on something or something? I don't know. Now, the layer effects. Well, basically, when bronze dragons, they generally make their home near or actually near the sea. No, we are not doing that. We are not doing that. That reference. Their layer effects actually play into this. Basically, creatures within a mile of that layer that lack a swim speed can ignore the extra cost of movement while they're swimming. Basically, if you have a man overboard situation, don't worry. The sailor can swim. Well,
If they can swim.
if they can swim, yeah. It's pretty good. And while it's in its layer, whether it's outside or inside, it can cast control weather for free and use its spellcasting ability as its spellcasting action. And when it does this, it can control the weather within a mile of its lair. And I really like that. That is really cool. And bronze dragons are generally, they're lawful good. So they're gonna spend a lot of time near ports and all that in the sea. You could almost have a Loch Ness Monster-esque thing going here. And they actually, it's kind of interesting that you could actually make this, like, they would make a great patron for, like, paladins, in my opinion. And, they can serve as advisors to whole kingdoms or help a kingdom flourish. And they're really, they're kind of, they're one of the lawful good dragon types. And I think having that as an encounter more than, oh, let's go kill the dragon, is a great change. And I really like the bronze dragon. I especially like its art.
The only downside to bronze dragons is do not let them invite you to lunch. You will be stuck in their lair for hours, if not days. They love to socialize. They love collecting stories. They love people. So yeah, if you get invited to tea, to lunch, to dinner, you're going to be there a while. But they're nice, friendly creatures as long as you don't make them angry at you. All right. So I also went for a dragon for my choice in this category, just so we can compare lawful good to the other end of the spectrum. Now, again, there were rumors that they were going to take the alignment tags off these monsters. They did not. So I went with Red Dragon. They are chaotic evil still. One of the things Wizards of the Coast did this time is, except for the white dragon, adult and ancient dragons of the metallic and the chromatic type now cast spells. If you want the gem dragon stat blocks, and they can already cast spells, they're going to be in the Fizban's Guide to Dragons. Any monster that's in an adventure book like Wild Beyond Witchlight or Fizban's Guide to Dragons or Glories of Giants will not be in the 2024 Monster Manual. Wizards of the Coast definitely wants you to buy all the books to have all the toys. So back to Red Dragons. They can now cast Fireball in the adult and ancient forms. Again, legendary actions are no longer a point system, but a number of times they can do it per turn. Or sorry, not turn, per round. And they have the treasure list attached. Their bite and claw attacks have been condensed down to one attack called a rend attack. So you have to roll bite or you have to roll claw. They get like one of these and two of these and four of these. And it was a lot of information in the stat block.
Do they still have
got it down to...
Oh, sorry. Do they still have their tail attack?
They do not. They lost their tail attack. It's now a rend.
Oh.
But they upgraded it, so no longer you do bite, claw, tail. Now it's just 3 rends, and each rend attack does fire damage.
Ooh.
So originally just the bite would fire damage, and the claw and tail would not. Now all 3 of these rend attacks do fire damage. On an an ancient red, it is plus 17 to hit, 2d8 plus 10 slashing, plus 3 6-sided dice fire damage. You've got that nice fire breath again. It is 26d6 fire damage on an ancient. On an adult, it would be 17 d6s. The spells they get, I'm going to go with the adult spells. They get Command at level 2, Detect Magic, Scorching Ray, and Fireball. The Ancients get level 2 Command, Detect Magic, and Scorching Ray at level 3, Fireball at level 6, and Scrying.
And
So each type of dragon has spells that match their damage type.
and a reminder to our audience, Fireball does not solve every problem.
It does not, especially if your people are fireproof.
Yeah.
And the buildings are built of stone.
Hmm.
So yeah, that is a big upgrade. They've made it quick. DM can just quickly look at that stat block, do the rend attacks. I don't have to read through 5 different attacks to choose what I'm doing. There is one breath weapon, there is one rend, and there is the spell casting. The dragon can make 3 rend attacks, or it can replace one of those attacked with a spell casting to cast Scorching Ray. Otherwise, it takes, I guess, their whole action to do the spell. The legendary actions this dragon has, they get 3 per round, 4 if they're in their lair. And again, this is the ancient. They can cast Command. They can use Fiery Rays, which is Scorching Ray, or they can pounce on somebody and then rend them.
Ooh, I like that.
So big upgrades, big upgrades.
And you can't go wrong with a classic Red Dragon.
No.
So for my next pick, I'm going with another classic that has shown up in recently. The Intellect Devourer, the walking brain on legs. This actually showed up in the Honor Among Thieves movie, though for some reason, despite the fact that they are often created by mind flayers, no mind flayers show up in the movie. And the ones in the movie that are the Intellect Devourers, they actually inhabit the Underdark, which not a fun place to go, I found out. And if you've been playing D&D for a long time, you probably know what an Intellect Devourer does. But just for a small reminder, Intellect Devourers, when the target is incapacitated or fails a DC 12 intelligence saving throw, can latch onto a person, consume their brain, teleport themselves inside the victim, and take control of their body. Which means they get all their stats, all their skills, and all of their knowledge. And the only ways to deal with a victim possessed by an Intellect Devourer is by means of a wish spell or killing the host body. Thankfully, before the Devourer takes control of its victim, it can be killed by most means, meaning it only has 28 hit points. Yeah, that thing makes my skin crawl. A walking brain on legs. I don't generally use those because those things give me the creeps. And I think the best way to use an Intellect Devourer is to have them in a situation where the party isn't expecting them to be, or have them as, minions of a Mind Flayer. And just when you're fighting a Mind Flayer, you have a bunch of Intellect Devourers just come rushing at you and they go, "Ree!"
I actually find them to be quite cute. They're a little brain on 4 legs. And when they released the D&D Lego figures, one of the ones you could find in the blind boxes was a Mind Flayer that came with a little plastic Intellect Devourer in it. And my son immediately stole every single Mind Flayer I pulled out of the blind bags. I think I was able to get one and hide it. But yeah, all of those are in his Minecraft Lego set right now. I'm going to have to sneak them back for D&D night. Oh, right. So I went with something more meat and potatoes of the game, goblins. We now have 4 goblin stat blocks to choose from instead of just like 1 or 2. And one of the things this book does is there is a chart that compares the new version to the 2014 version so you know which ones are equivalent. They went through for a bunch of different monsters in this book and gave us 4 to 5 to 6 different variants of the same creature at different levels of CR rating. So in this case for the goblins, we have a 1/8 CR rating for the Goblin Warrior, a 1/4, the minion is the 1/8 CR level.
Banana?
The warrior at CR 14, CR 1/4 compared to the 2014 goblin. A goblin boss at challenge rating 1, and a hexer, which is a magic user at challenge rating 3. You can mix and match these stat blocks to make a very cool, realistic goblin village. I just ran this on my players last week. They're playing Tales from the Yawning Portal. They're in Sunblight Citadel. Spoiler alert, there's goblins there. And I just spawned a bunch of these different level goblins so that they would have a variety of goblins to attack. And it made the fight a lot more challenging for them. Because not only it's like, oh, the goblin stabs you or the goblin shoots you with an arrow. It's, oh, this goblin is hitting you with his hex stick and you're getting jinxed or hexed, or they're blinding you or deafening you. They're casting fairy fire on the team. They're putting grease under their feet. It really ups the fun for the DM and the players too. I mean, it's not just, oh, he shoots you with an arrow. You can mix and match these stat blocks. Goblins are now considered fey creatures instead of monstrosities, which kind of makes sense. I mean, they are from fairy tales. They have some fun reactions to combat now. A goblin can, if they're a goblin boss, they can pick up a minion or a warrior and switch places with them. So you're trying to hit the boss, they pick up Nobbin the Goblin, stick it in front of them as a meat shield, and now you've hit Nobbin the Goblin instead of the boss. The Hexer gets a Jinx reaction. When they get hit, they can do a Wisdom saving throw on you, and if you fail, you miss hitting them, because they are little tricksters. The lower level goblins can disengage or hide as a bonus action. So they've upped the difficulty on goblins, and they are a lot of fun. This having the different level stat blocks really cuts down on prep time for DMs now, because now you don't have to homebrew the stat block to make them more of a challenge for your players.
You can even do a 40k thing where like you have the goblins and they just have like their whole power imagination thing going, and also you can have like a situation where like you're in the middle of a goblin camp and they're deciding how best to cook you, and then they're having an argument with the orcs and the orcs chop off one of their head. Looks like meat's back on our menu, boys. I'm gonna be making a lot of War Regs references here. And goblins are a classic. They are very much they're a staple for a reason, and they've shown up in a lot more than just D&D. Like, you've got them, there's a whole, like, line of cards for Magic the Gathering, and you've got other things like, other fantasy movies, which I think is really cool, and I'm glad they're getting more love. So, for my final monster, I've gone with another classic, and the face of one of the modules, the vampire, and all of its variants. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 vampire types. Probably the creepiest art out of this entire section, and probably even the book, is the Nightbringer vampire. That thing gives me the shivers, and it makes me like, it's terrifying. Let's just call it that. I think the most interesting thing is how they depict the vampire resting places and their lair abilities. So the vampire spawn retains a lot of the classic vampire weaknesses like running water, sunlight, a stake to the heart, and it cannot enter a household without being invited. Strangely, though, they don't have the garlic, the mirror, or the counting salts thing, which is strange since these are a combination of this is supposed to be a combination of the classic vampire and the modern vampire. I guess garlic is too easy of a weakness, and for some reason it doesn't specify that the stake has to be silver. And interestingly, they don't bring up the silver weakness in the werewolf section. It's not there, I checked. I guess getting your hands on silver is just super easy in D&D now. And it's like, what's going on? Are we taking away like a classic weakness because it's way too easy to kill them? Or are we just, have we finally decided to join the 21st century and realize, oh yeah, werewolves can be, killed with buckshot, or vampires can be hit with mostly sunlight, which means radiant damage. Lots and lots of radiant damage.
Also with the vampires, again, stat blocks are suggestions for the DMs. So if you want to give your vampire weakness to garlic, go for it. I have a group that is playing Animal Adventures, which is a 5e supplement. One of the characters is playing an orange cat named Garfield, They're playing Curse of Strahd. Garfield's obsessed with lasagna. He just made lasagna armor, and we're just using the same damage Holy Water would do when he goes up and slaps Strahd with the lasagna noodles. DMs, be creative. It's fine. All right, so my final choice, I'm going with an undead choice here, kind of like the vampire, but they have really powered up the undead. In this case, I'm going with a right, but the other undead stat blocks are also reflecting this change. You used to be able to make a con save against these things called life drain attacks. And if you survive the con save, nothing happens, and you take like half the damage. The penalty if you failed, though, is your HP maximum is reduced by the amount of damage you took. So, for example, you had 30 hit points. The life drain does 5. You now have 25 max hit points. That's all you can heal up to. You can no longer heal up to 30. Now, the upgrade is, if the attack hits you, there is no saving throw. You lose the hit point maximum and take the damage. Now, one oversight is there's nothing in the stat block that says how the player undoes this problem. So if you had 30 hit points, you took 5 damage, you now have 25 max hit points. How do you get back to 30? That's going to be a DM decision. If your DM's playing a very gritty game, it might be there is no way to get it back except level up. In my games, I have talked with my players. We have decided that if you long rest, greater restoration, or lesser restoration, your hit point maximum goes back up to where it should be. But someone in the party has to have those 2 spells, and you have to have a chance to rest for that 8 hours. And, there's also some cool charts with a lot of the monsters that give you motivation for the monster, what the monster might look like, their motivations, their ambushes. For example, the Right's motives, it could be challenging people next to their grave on a certain night. It might have an oath that is unfulfilled. It's looking for a stolen heart or other treasure that somebody took from it. For a will-o-wisp, they're going to ambush you. They're an ambush predator. They might have a trap that they hover over that they're hoping you fall into. They might encourage brown mold or green mold to grow in a certain area so that it traps the adventurer. A will-o-wisp can't steal your life force until you're dead. So, they've got to lure you in somehow to kill you.
And
But yeah, the undead. Go ahead.
God help you if you run into a banshee. Just saying, banshees are there's a reason why banshees are kind of feared in the and God help you if you run into a hanging tree, assuming you're using the 2014 rules. But I think you can use it. You use some of the stats if you can convert it. I think using a hanging tree would actually be kind of interesting. Which, funny story, a friend of mine actually had a party where they encountered a hanging tree, and one of the party members decided to climb into the hanging tree. He died, and he became
No.
he became part of the tree. So which is funny also because they actually we get a good example of a hanging tree in believe it or not, Nightmare Before Christmas. It's kind of interesting how they did that. Anyway, so before we wrap up here, what are your thoughts on the overall quality of the book, and do you think it's still worth buying despite all the changes they made and all the little bits of controversy that are floating around?
All right, there's always going to be controversy. Any change to any long-standing game, people are going to find some kind of fault with it, obviously. This is a well put together book. The artwork is beautiful. It is organized well. However, it depends on what kind of D&D game you're running. This can be paired up with the 2014 book to give you a variety of monster options that are stronger and varied. I have played around in the last few weeks with side-by-side monster comparisons where we took a 2014 troll and a 2024 troll, and the team battled both, and I got feedback from the players. Some players like the new monsters better because they're a lot stronger. They're a lot more of a challenge, and they can do more cool things. This is actually the 8th or 9th monster book in D&D in the 5e system. We have the 2014 Monster Manual. Mordecai presents the Monsters of the Multiverse, Bizben's Guide to Dragons, The Glory of Dragons, Boo's Astral Menagerie, Volo's Guide to Monsters, Mordekainen's Tomes of Foes. So it really depends on, Is this a resource you want to use as a DM? You want to spend the money to buy the book? There is something on the internet called the SRD, free to use monster stat blocks. You can look up any monster you want with that. There are third-party monster books. Coldball Press puts out a great set of books called Tomb of Foes 1, 2, and 3. I absolutely love them because your players can't metagame the monsters because they're not the official D&D monster manual, and everybody owns that as a player most likely. But it really, the answer depends on will you use the book in your game? If you're not, then don't put out the money for it. If you want to collect it for the artwork, awesome. It has beautiful artwork. If you're going to use it, then it's a great investment. But if you feel that, I only need one stat block out of that book for the next 20-week campaign, you can look up that stat block for free online. It's a great resource. I definitely bought a copy, and we're using it, and the players are enjoying the new monsters. They really like the new challenges. They like that the monsters are now fresh because the other book's been out for 10 years. Everyone's seen those stat blocks. This is a nice change that the players are enjoying. But again, it depends on your players. It depends on the game you're running. And if it's worth it to buy the book for you, the DM.
I can agree with that. I would say maybe wait for a sale before you actually buy, like, if you're gonna buy like the online version, I would say wait for a sale. Check your local game store, make sure their price isn't too crazy. Um just, and if you can, like, find a way to copy the monster stats down so that you have them if you don't want to use the whole book. I would definitely recommend it. I would say bring both monster manuals. Just bring both classics so that you can, if you decide, hey, I don't want to use the new book, you can just go to the 2014 book. I usually just go with the 2014 book because it's I'm very wordy about my stuff, so I like the detail about it. But I appreciate that they're churning it out and they're basically streamlining it so that it's easier for new DMs and new players. And thankfully, there's plenty of monsters that are actually, like, not that challenging. Thank Christ, because just these examples that we've looked at, these are mostly either legendary monsters or they're like medium challenge. They're not like some of the lower challenge rating monsters are still challenging, and they're still that you can have a lot of fun with them. Anyway, so stay tuned for next week. We've got another lore video coming up. We'll see you guys next time.